The mortgage business was a fantastic learning experience on leadership. And in my sense, well, could I have done it differently? There's always things you can do better. Would I have traded it though? And that's the thing about experience. I don't think I would have. Hello, my friend, and welcome to this Business Monday episode of A Call to Leadership. I'm Dr. Nate Saul, your host. I'm so glad you are here. Well, business and money go hand in hand. Finances are the fuel we have to fund the lives we desire to create for ourselves, for our employees, for our businesses. And so such an important topic that we're going to continue to materialize on several episodes on this program. I've invited a special co-host, Craig Mason. Can't wait for you to listen in. This is A Call to Leadership. What's up, Craig?
What's going on?
Thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate it. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of stuff over the years, and I wanted to bring you on the show for a lot of reasons. I want to have you back many times because you are
to be seen.
We'll see. Not just to be heard.
No, I mean it'll be to be seen if I'm welcome back.
Right. Yeah, time will tell. We've known each other for over 20 years, and the journey that you and I have had has been one of many changes. Entrepreneurship, life, family, and so politics. We're going to have lots of great conversations, but I wanted to start our first conversation on the show as people get to know you, this entrepreneurial journey, because someone listening right now is in the entrepreneurial space where either they're just getting started as a business owner, perhaps they're just getting ready to start a new business, perhaps they are in a situation to where they're looking for a second act in business, especially with the pandemic, all the craziness that's happened, right? Businesses have come and go. And I want to rewind a little because what I've found is your model for starting in business, and not only starting in business, but also being diligent in terms of how you run your business, very focused, very fiscally, I don't want to just say conservative, fiscally mindful, and understanding that tomorrow we don't know what it's going to bring. Anything can happen. And you, of all places, being in the mortgage business,
right? Geez,
talk about volatility. Let's start with what some of the motivations were for you to go into entrepreneurship.
Well, you were one of the first steps I took in entrepreneurship. So it's funny. I had an employer that I was working in mortgages for. We're not going to say any names, but it worked for somebody, and I was grateful for the opportunity. But at the prior employer who went out of business, I was making, and it's just going to sound crazy, 60% commission. And I remember seeing you at Gold's, and we talked about this on Manchester. But I was doing 60% W-2 of what I was self-generating business. I came to the new place after the other place went out of business and was getting 50%. I was grateful for the position, but I'd been there for a while, and I was generating good business and all self-generated leads, no headache, anything I needed. I was always going directly to my lender reps or to the underwriter. I just felt like I had a good value as far as what I was providing the company with little to no headache. So I approached this owner of this company and I said, hey, I would like to, actually I saw you first, and we're both, trying to bench like high schoolers. And you said, hey, why don't have you ever thought about opening your own shop? And I was just like, oh man, no. It's like, oh, it's just too much to think about, too much. No. So I go, and so you approached me about that. And I was like, well, Nate's be a good guy to partner with. He just seems to make the right decisions. So I got the wheels turning. So luck, I guess, was part of it, bumping into you that day at Gold's.
Or the right context, yeah.
Yeah, so, and knowing you before. So just, sometimes it's just, again, like they say, it's not about what you know, but who you know. So I approached this owner about, sorry this is taking so long, but anyway, I approached this guy about, hey, can I just go to 60% where I was before? I feel like it would be worth it for everybody. So he goes, let me think about it. I would think that would be an immediate, yes, let's take care of you, let's keep you. So that was like on a Thursday. Well, the Friday goes by, it's the next week, and I'm kind of boiling inside. I'm like thinking like, why has he not responded? Like, what is going on? So I go back into his office the following Friday. So we're 8 days. And I go, hey, did you have any thought on, he's like, thought on what? And I was like, about the 60% commission. He's, oh yeah, come on in. So he goes, all right, well, I talked to my wife and we'll go to 55%. So I stood up and shook his hand and I said, thank you very much for the opportunity you've given me, but I am going to open my own shop and explore other opportunities. So really it got me thinking, like, I wanted to run someplace and treat people the way I wanted to be treated.
Yeah.
Overpay, pay them what they're worth. Don't be greedy. Don't get in your own way over pride. And I just felt very valuable, and I felt very devalued after that conversation. I just couldn't believe it. 55, like, what's the point? I had to come back and said, how's 65 and you stay? So walked out, and you and I started February of 07 was when we started the first the branch of the new chapter.
It's interesting. You that's the formula. So, like, breaking that down for someone listening, one, establish relationships that are that have the potential to take you new places. And your environment, who you're around, man, it's like you said, who you know. I've said this on the show before. I've been to school for a long, long time. So what I know, you would think is a lot, but I would set it all aside for the relationships, because, man, that's what gets you places. Right. Now, granted, it's not an either or, it's an and, right? Because what you know and who you know work really well together.
And what they know. That's where you put yourself around people smarter than you that already show success, and and feed into it.
100%. Yeah. So if you're listening, one question is, like, assess your community, right? Like, who I'm around. And I've said this before, if you're the smartest person in the room, go find another room.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Go
find another room. And it's cool to do that. And some people might say, well, it's kind of intimidating to be around people who are more successful than me, right? That's a valid kind of thought, right? But if you're the kind of person who has the drive, has the will, has the motivation, has the potential aptitude, people who are ahead of you will want to be around you too.
Right.
They're not going to be like, oh yeah, you're you don't have any Grey Poupon.
Right. Yeah. What's crazy is the first time, it's very humbling, really, because, well, my climb was pretty slow and then kind of had an explosion. But when somebody looks up to you and says, wow, I'm proud to be your friend, and I'm proud. I just had a friend the other night who actually is an entrepreneur. He runs a restaurant, and he's just like, man, just to see you I've known him since 1999, just a little bit longer than we've known each other. And he's like, just to see you do the things you've done and have the success and have the people following you, in your organization. Yeah. It just feels, you don't even think about it sometimes and you just kind of are in go mode. And it was just, I don't know, it was just it was nice to hear that you're like, wow, all the people I've looked up to forever, now people are looking up to me.
Yeah. And they look up to you because of your track record, right? They look up to you because you have demonstrated the kind of tenacity, ability, results that are important to them. And I think that's really important to line out this process of becoming the kind of person who you want to be. Like, you've got to do the heavy lifting. You've got to make the heavy sacrifices. It's not an easy road. You know that.
Right.
You've got to say no to things that you probably want for more later.
Absolutely.
I mean, when we were starting, a lot of entrepreneurs make this mistake. They go out and buy all the fancy stuff,
yep.
Right? Now, don't get me wrong. In the 90s, I was on paper. I didn't look nearly as good as I did showing up to the club on a Saturday night.
You got to look the part when you don't have the money.
Right. But even then, I was still fairly judicious, I guess you'd say,
right,
from a financial perspective. But I've seen it, especially in the accounting side of it, and I've seen people who have like no profit. It's like, where are all these Mercedes Benzes coming from?
Yes.
You're in the mortgage business, so you see financials, just like I see financials.
Just like in West County, like how many Escalades are just, I guess, $125,000 car. Like, what's everybody doing? And then you start thinking about yourself too. You're like, wow, what can I do better? Maybe I'm complacent. Should I look at other opportunities or more within what I'm already doing. So it is crazy to see the money that's out there. And yesterday I saw 2 McLarens. 2 yesterday. I'm just like, okay.
And the question is, okay, what does that McLaren mean? Like I always told Sam, who you know well and who's on our show as well. For me, cars are what I call a non-performing asset. Right? There's no real revenue generation from that. So I look at cars from the perspective of, okay, does this provide me utility or value? And how much value or utility does it provide me incrementally in relation to the cost? So, I mean, I've got nice cars, but I'm always thinking,
plural, used cars.
I'm always thinking, I want to be able to sell my cars for at least what I paid for them, if not more, which I can because I buy them right.
Right.
And that gives me comfort. But then, of course, there's other factors. There's insurance.
Right.
If you took a car note, there's going to be interest. Of course, depreciation doesn't factor in if you're buying them right, but it can. Right. Markets change all the time. Now, some would argue, and Sam, if he was on the program, you're like, dude, forget about that. You're spending too much time thinking and worrying. However, there are some pluses to that.
Right.
And you've gone down that road. And I do want to talk about that because you went down the road of managing your impulses. Not that you didn't have nice stuff. You always were well put together and you always had decent stuff, but you managed your impulses and you were a saver. You saved in a very intentional way. And most people aren't like that. I mean, I know that because, again, you can't lie to the tax man, right?
Right.
On the accounting side, like, you can't fake it with me.
Right.
My team, when they do your bookkeeping, like, I know what you're spending your money on, right? And I know how much you have left in your bank account. What drives that?
There was a long time where there was very little in the bank account, and I think when you start, as long as you can, well, there's a lot that goes into it. Let's just back up. Having people in your life that stabilize you is huge. So honestly, meeting my wife in 2010 was a big changer for me. Having children, I do have an older daughter before I met my wife, so that kind of started getting me thinking, like, there's things more important than me, and I need to protect me and things around me for those people. So I became somewhat got a healthy obsession with wealth accumulation, not to where it affected my time with family or free time or anything like that, but just with the strategy of what to do with money and when. So that's what I try to preach to my mortgage clients too. It's just a lot different, but anyway, we try to do an obsession with wealth accumulation. So anyway, that was what was driving me, was to put enough away. And I never wanted to let's say you buy a $200,000 house and you've got $15,000 to your name. I just didn't want to be in that position anymore. I always wanted to have more in assets than equity, and it just, so.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like that terminology, a healthy obsession with wealth accumulation. It can be healthy. It can be unhealthy too.
It can. And you can make bad mistakes. I've got friends that I've known them forever, didn't even know they gambled. $13,000 a month losing at the casino, and you're just like, what? Like, yeah, don't tell anybody. Right. So secret's still safe. But it's just, vices, people just make bad mistakes. And I've been very, very frugal, sometimes to a fault where my family might want to choke me out. Like, what do you mean ranch is $1.50 extra? Can't you just eat the sandwich the way that the chef prepared it? But then at the same time, it's like we go buy a nice vehicle or a watch or whatever. So it's, you got to check it. But every $1.50 you saved helps to fund that. My watch, that's right. No, but yes, it's, I do have to check myself.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. I've had to do that too. I think we're cut from the same cloth in that way. And it happened to me, I mentioned it on one episode, so not most of our listeners won't have known about this. But it happened to me probably about 7-8 years ago. I was having a conversation with a friend. He's like, man, Nate, you're so cheap when it comes to some things, and you're so like out of the box, willing to just drop it on other things. It's really interesting. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And so the very next day, I was over here at Lion's Choice, and
good people.
Yeah, good people.
Good food.
So I was ordering a roast beef sandwich, and the guy asked me, of course,
You want cheese?
you want cheese? And the first thing I said was, how much is it? He said 45 cents. Guess what I did, Craig?
No, thank you.
I said no, and I was like, he's right. Oh my goodness, I am cheap.
But you know what? It's the self-awareness that can help you grow to be a better person. And I'm not just saying this for the show, because I have this conversation with my wife a lot. It doesn't mean you don't do it, but if you become aware, you can at least try to manage it.
Correct. Yes. And so for me, I'm in Cheapskate Anonymous. And so it's tough though, because
Hi, Nate.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Nate. I'm in Cheapskate Anonymous. But I got the cheese. I started getting the cheese. It was difficult. It was difficult to let go of that 45 cents.
Right.
But it was a little liberating.
And man, the price of my sandwich just went up like 18%. What are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing you think about. But I think it can be bondage, I guess, in a way. You can be in a financial prison where you put yourself in this frugality. See, it's like two sides of it, because on the one side, you could be like, hey, family, I made some really big blunders. We can't pay the mortgage, right? On the other side, you'd be like, hey, family, we rented the smallest possible car that has roll up windows and no air conditioning because it saved me $4 a day at Avis.
Right.
So it's a wide variance.
Not a cool dad.
And I did that once, by the way. I did that too.
You waived air conditioning?
I didn't waive the air, but
if it's a convertible, I get it.
I just got the Econ car, and it was my wife, Tara, as you know, and Abram, and he was just a little baby, and we were going to Florida, and I was like, I'm just going to get it saved me like $4. And it was roll up windows and the locks you had to pull. So as I'm in Florida, there are a lot of tolls. As I'm rolling the windows down, she's recording it to be like, I'm going to play this video for you every time you rent cars, because the $4, you needed to spend it. It's going to be okay.
Right. It's like I'm having a deja vu now just from your stories from me, not the exact story, but just stuff all the time. Like, I may have get a beer with dinner, and let's say it's $7, and then I'm harping about 95 cents for the side of sour cream that the kid wants. It's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Do I need the beer for $7 or, so
it's so right.
You got to just check yourself. What am I doing? But then, you go out and want to drop whatever, a lot of money on a vehicle or something. I mean, it's a weird
spectrum.
It is. But do you wonder if that's how has that mentality gotten us to where you can afford those nice things?
That's the thing.
You know what I mean? Because I remember when I first opened that office and you were a partner, I remember going backwards financially at first, because I don't know if you remember, we were Westar for a very brief moment in time, and they were charging us for running the Fannie Mae findings and the credit reports. So like, we're making no money. It's right at the beginning of the finance. I mean, February of 2007, you want to talk about timing.
Yeah.
Horrible. So we open the shop up, dump all the money in leads, spend all this money, and we're getting like $5,000 bills immediately that's a lot of money at the time, went zero. So I'm just in the red right out of the gates. And I remember one of the guys who wasn't producing at the time was, so I bought these Dell. You remember how we got the Dell computers? So the wide 19-inch widescreen. And so I have all this nice stuff around, glass tables from Sharper Image and all this stuff. No loans closing. And this loan officer is like, and a good friend of mine really, but he goes, well, what do you want to eat? We're over in Westport off of Dorset and whatever, Shoots. So he goes, he pulls the menu up on a 19-inch screen, which I thought was massive at the time. And
flat screen too. Back in the day.
And he prints it. He prints the menu.
I know where you're going.
Walks to the printer, and he carries it back to his desk. I screamed at him so much. So keep in mind, the paper's 11 inches wide. So it's smaller in his hand than it is on the screen. I'm like, what are you doing? You just printed like 4 pages. I'm like thinking what toner cost. And I remember, Nate, somebody had called, and they don't do this anymore. So if any listeners are young, but there used to be directory assistants. So on the charter before they became Spectrum, there'd be like $1.20 or something on. I'm like, who? Like there's 8 or 11 loan officers. I'm like, who is calling directory assistants? I would call to get the $1 something off. I'm just like, what in the world? But you got to grow as a person. You know, they say a person who is through changing is a person who's through. So I'm trying to evolve every day and become better. But who knows, if I didn't, you know, smack people's hands at the printer back then, maybe I wouldn't still be in business. I don't know.
It's interesting you bring all that up, because that's the Amazon approach still today, right? Still today, Amazon is very frugal on the internal piece to offer maximum savings. So they do, you know, Jeff Bezos, when he started, 1% to 2% margin is what he was looking for, right? Just super, super high volume. Clearly it worked.
Right.
And I don't know, I haven't researched Amazon in the last 5 to 10 years, but I do remember even at that point, the desks were very bare, just the opposite approach like Google.
Right.
Where Google's massage therapy.
Yeah.
All you can eat.
Yeah. Nap room. Yeah.
Not so at Amazon. And so they're opposite approaches to business. And like you said, I wonder just how much of the journey counted on that, because I was in the same boat as you in a lot of ways. Although I did spend, I was spending a lot of money with, especially in the mortgage side, I was going bigger then than I would today.
Right.
I had more of an appetite for risk.
It was different then though too. You kind of had to be big, you kind of had to look big.
Right.
And you know, that Locust building with all the attorneys, I mean, you walk in and it's Porsches and Mercedes, and I'm, you know, hoping to make $20,000 this year, or you know, whatever it's going to be. But that, I understand what you were building, and I don't think it was wrong at the time. I just, you know, Novastar took a dive, and
it was all in
corporately, not our branch, but
4,000 square foot, all glass offices. I mean, it was beautiful. It had beautiful
really
views, and we had a dozen loan officers, 3 processors, a sales manager, a full telemarketing team, 6 predictive dialers.
Right.
I mean, we were punching stuff out.
Yeah.
But when you have that level of commitment, it all has to go right. It does, man, because as soon as one thing is off, man, all production can halt, and you're spending, I think our overhead, and this is like 2001 to about 2006, was $20,000+ a month.
Wow.
Fixed.
And that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago. And so everything had to fire. And of course, does it always in the mortgage business? No. Loans don't always close. Rates aren't always right.
Loan officers don't
show up. I mean, they get a fat paycheck for $7,000-8,000. You don't see them for 2 weeks.
I know who you're talking about. Not me. It wasn't me.
No, it was not you. But that's the industry. And so that's the industry I stepped into. Of course, at the time, the accounting business was seasonal. It was just taxes. We just did taxes. We didn't do a full cycle. So I had to have another business to sustain us.
Now, were you doing taxes before mortgages?
Yeah, I started taxes in 95.
That's right. Okay. Yep. I knew it was, 30 years.
Yeah, just about. And so the mortgage was, it's complimentary, and during tax season, I can kind of back off. And so that was good. And then I got to meet great people like you and have a great learning experience. I mean, for me, the mortgage business was a fantastic learning experience on leadership, and in my sense, well, could I have done it differently? You always think there's always things you can do better.
Right.
Would I have traded it though? And that's the thing about experience. I don't think I would have, man. I lost a ton of money when we had to, close down the predictive dialing stuff. Because I invested $60,000 just in that system. Because, it's got to dial 5,000 numbers a day.
Right. Well, you know what, though? I always say that I would much rather later in life say, I wish I would have done that, instead I wish I wouldn't have done that, because you at least know you tried it. If you went back and said, man, I wish we'd have opened up that shop on Locust, and just I wonder how it would have gone. You know what I mean? So you did it, so you can never say, I wish I hadn't have done that, because like you said, it was a learning experience. So everything you've done helps lead up to where you are today. I just don't want to be, so you talked about entrepreneurship. Don't look back and say, I wish I would have done that. You'd rather tried it and failed and say, okay, well, I did that and it didn't work out, but don't say you wish you hadn't done it, because it's a learning experience. But if you hadn't never done it, you look back and there's no way to change it.
Yeah.
Either way, you can't change it, but I would have at least rather tried. So, yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom in that. And the journey, the entrepreneurial journey, it's a journey. It's a life.
Right.
I mean, it's a completely different animal than punching a clock and going in and doing your routine. And we need you as well as we need the entrepreneur, because the entrepreneur creates the environment where the technician can do their best possible work.
Right.
And it works. Unless you've experienced entrepreneurship at that level, it's almost impossible to really truly describe the range of emotion.
That was just going through my head before you even got to that. The fear, the not quite the Rockefeller, but is enough? When is enough? Or do I have enough? Or, but you don't want to, be on pins and needles, because then you don't perform at your best. You want to be relaxed, and you want to be.
Yeah, because fear does not, when you're living in fear, you have to expend energy for that emotion.
Combat it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I need to get over this to,
Which then takes energy away from productivity.
Absolutely. Backing up though is talking about learning from experience in entrepreneurship. So you and I after Novastar shut down, I took my course and did, a couple different mortgage companies. But think how differently we did it when we partnered and opened up the first Capital Solutions lending there in then 2007. The rent was $600.
Right.
So what a vast change in just 3 years or 4 years, whatever it was, 4 years. You and I had been apart for 2.5, 3 years or whatever. When that Locust was finally cut out and everything. But man, did we do it right then? And truly, one thing that I would always recommend to somebody, and I'm sure this experience that you had would probably, because you said you would have done it differently, but always bust at the seams.
Right.
Always bust at the seams. Just don't try to get too big too fast. Even if you think you have to have this 10,000 square foot space to make your work, just make something else work first. Bust at the seams.
I agree. Yeah, I love that philosophy. And and that's been your philosophy is, okay, so make this space work until there's just no way. In fact, that's how we are in one of our locations down in Sunset Hills. It's a great little 1,200 square foot spot. We've been in it for a decade. But it is at the point now to where it's just like people are like, hey, where can I go if I just need to come in for a few hours? I'm like, I got no room for you.
And that's
a good place to be. Yeah. That's a good place to be in business.
It really is. And then that's how I ended up moving from that office. Is there was a spot for 5 people and we ended up hiring 4 more. So we took the lobby and I put cubicles in the lobby. So, in the waiting room. So we had 4 people out there. And so there were 9 people in a 600 square foot office.
Wow.
And it was chaotic. And then a company went out of business. Another mortgage company went out of business in St. Charles. They came on board. So I had to take a bigger space.
Yeah.
But I had to. I had to. I did not. If I wanted these people, I had to get a new space. So it made sense. So I took on, I'd saved and everything added up, and you have to calculate, okay, if things fall apart for X amount of months, you saw it in COVID where 2-3 weeks without income and businesses would shut down. You wonder how do they sustain? How are they in business to begin with? You need to have a plan beyond that. Now, I only run one, 2 businesses now, and I'm not in their shoes, but it's pretty tough when a month or 2 shuts you down.
100%. Yeah. It's tough enough when you're not shut down.
It sure is. Yeah.
So speaking of that, and I want to talk about this for a few minutes because someone listening is like, wait a minute, did you say mortgage business? I need to know what's up with all these mortgage rates. Yeah, so when I first started, so the September of 2001 is when I went into the mortgage business, and rates were at about 8.5%.
Okay.
And rates were considerably good, historically speaking,
right.
8.5. And then they started coming down. Oh my goodness. And it was like cloud 9. Once they got to 8, people are like, oh my goodness, it's a frenzy.
Yeah.
And then 7.5. And boy, when they came down to 6 or 6.5, and that's when we
Yep.
kind of got together.
It's exactly where they were.
And then they started continuing to decline until, what was the lowest?
Oh, we put people in the upper ones. Now it was a 10, like a 10-year fix, and I usually recommend longer terms, but most people that we refinanced in, at least in 2021, are in the 2s. Now that's FHA conventional. It doesn't matter. They're in the 2s. I mean, 3.25 was high at the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Now we're bouncing between 7 and 8.
Which is historically
right.
Before, I guess it's prior to the last 20 years.
Right.
And I think that's the challenge, is that, hey, there's an entire generation of people who have no idea. Just like our generation didn't know about the Carter era, 15% rates that were back during that time.
18 to 22 in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even more.
The Fed lending rate was over 22%. It was zero all during Obama, and even mostly through Trump, I believe it was 0%. So we've been spoiled for a long time.
Yeah. So today rates are higher. That has an impact on consumer decisions, right? Buying decisions. Do you think it was a good idea to raise the rates as fast as they were raised?
They had to, but that should have started way before. I think the pandemic, which was good for a lot of people, bad for a lot of people, it caused the rates to drop, market to explode after it declined, of course, the stock market, that is. But the Fed should have jumped on it sooner. They're just, who knows what political pressure they have to hold back as long as they can. And then finally, not that it's the same reason as 2008, the housing crisis, completely different reason.
Yeah.
But you don't want to see go till it's way too late. So, and sometimes when these rates go up, the Fed lending rate goes up, then mortgage rates drop a little bit.
Right. So perhaps a longer, started sooner and longer duration, right?
Yes.
The sudden hike.
And maybe less. Yes, less. Instead of going 3/4 each time, you could do a quarter.
Yeah, a quarter.
And then, yeah, and then maybe it gets under wraps sooner. Right. But and I don't think they were ever being fully honest about what inflation was, saying it was 8-9%. If a bag of chips was $2 and now it's $3,
it's a lot more than 8.
Consumers are gonna be like, oh, it's $3 bag of chips, whatever. Well, that's a huge increase. It's 50% increase in your cost. So I know it was double digits for sure. Inflation. I mean, eggs, $8 whatever. Maybe people were charging because they could.
I mean, the houses and cars. Just insane.
Yeah, well, that was, so many people refinanced at 2% to go that they didn't want to move. They got in these amazing homes for really low payments. And now there's no inventory. So people are like, hey, look, if I'm going to go to another house and take 6%, 6.5%, 7%, I'm going to need top dollar for this house or I'm not moving. Well, the other person says, we have to have a house.
Right.
So 70,000 over asking, 80,000, all cash buyers now, which is crazy. Not all, but there's a lot of cash buyers. So yeah, it's just changed the market.
Interesting. I wonder, you being a mortgage expert, I've been out of the mortgage industry for 13 plus years now. And I got out at the time where increased regulation at that time.
Right.
And I had to make a decision. Okay, do I want to double down and do all the extra work that's involved with the increased regulation, or do I want to go a different direction? I ended up going a different direction, which was, I think I'm just going to focus on expanding our tax business so that we offer full cycle accounting and advisory and so on. And it worked out really great for me. You stayed in the business.
Right.
And of course, your expertise has really just been phenomenal, especially all the clients who you've served over the years absolutely love the work you do because you get stuff done. And it's not like a shameless plug for you, but you just do.
Thank you.
And sometimes I don't want to just say impossible stuff because you're gonna have lots of phones ringing like, hey, I got a 275. Didn't even know credit scores could go that low. Do you when people are looking to buy a house, and this is always a question people ask about, do I do a 30-year fixed? Do I do an ARM? I mean, I know there's variables in that, but do we still do 30-year fixed loans?
All the time.
Yeah.
That's what I always recommend. Like if you're going to refinance or move every 3 to 5 years, why would you do a 15-year fix? Because all the money you put down on your house, one, you're not going to pay it off in 3 years, right? So maybe you paid more off of the house. Well, you buy homes so they'll appreciate, right? So your house is going up 4%, 5% each year, regardless of what you pay down on it. So it's an opportunity cost to take a 30-year loan over a 15 because there's more money you can do investing for long-term with what you're not putting down on your house. So if you buy a 15-year fix, your payments are double. You live there for 3 years and sell it. All you do is all the money you paid in, you just get that back. Now, you did pay a little bit less interest, but all the money you put in the house is now worth less because of inflation. So each year, the dollar is worth less. So you get, let's say you paid $40,000 down in 3 years. You get your $40,000 back, but is it worth 30 now, 35 due to inflation? Where the way you combat that, do a 30-year fixed, finance the most, as long as the numbers do line up, invest the difference each month. Instead of putting $200 extra on your mortgage, put it in a brokerage account or with your financial advisor, and then let compound interest work against inflation.
Because the return on investment is greater than that
always
2.5%, 3.5%, 4%.
Historically, always. Yeah. I don't even care. Now, there's going to be times where it crosses over, where interest rates are at 8 and you're only making 3% on the market. But that's usually short term. So, and I mean really short. Like the market bounced back pretty quick. I mean, it's very volatile right now, but historically, you're going to get 10% out of the market. Now, don't forget too, as a tax advisor, you get to deduct the interest on your interest rate. So whatever tax bracket you're in, to my understanding, you deduct that from your interest rate. So if you're in a 30% tax bracket, really your interest rate is 30% less.
And it's if you're even able to itemize based on a number of factors, because itemizations have kind of become less and less in what people can itemize. But it's a really important point you bring up, because today it seems to me, and I'd love to hear you weigh in on this, less people are actually paying off their mortgages.
That is the best absolute. If I could finance 100% interest only, I would do it all day long. So you should never, ever, ever have any more equity than assets. Some people would rather pay off their house, and I see it. They'll have, so one thing is that differentiates what I feel that I do is I do take an advisory approach, and I take each client. A lot of people will say, "Hey, you're the third person I've spoken to, and you're the only person that said this." It's like you ask somebody, well, it's, how much is the house? Well, that's $300,000. What do you want to put down? 20%. The other loan officers, mortgage advisors say, okay, well, here's our rate, and here you go. I say, well, why do you want to put down 20%? And the client says, well, I don't want to pay mortgage insurance. And I'm like, well, why don't you want to pay mortgage insurance? They're like, I don't know. I thought I wasn't supposed to. Well, let's talk about your plans. Any plans that might take some cash in the next 6 months? Well, we were going to gut the kitchen and we were going to get a home equity line. Stop right there. You're going to put the money down and then take it out at a higher interest rate, if you could even get it, because a lot of people won't even lend above 80% of your home's value. So I'll say, hey, keep the money. Here's what you're paying. Mortgage insurance isn't a bad thing anymore. When we were, it could be $400 a month on a $300 home, $300,000 house when we started in 2003. Now it might be $60 a month. So do you want to save the difference in the money? So anyway, I try to show people, and I get real with them too. I say, I might say some things that make you uncomfortable, but I'm here to, like, you hired me to do a job, and I'm going to do it to my fullest. I feel obligated. So I say, well, you've got $30,000 in credit card debt. I'm not going to, I'm not getting on to you about it. I'm just talking about facts. You got $5,000 in your 401k. You're putting extra money toward your house each month, and it's this cyclical, it's a cycle of suffering. So I say, stop paying off your house, let it ride, pay down the credit card debt, but you also need to put some money in this retirement. And you want to see the credit card debt and the retirement do this.
Yeah.
So, and then, a lot of people would rather have their house paid off, a $300,000 house, than have $300,000 in the bank. If you're buying a $300,000 house and you don't have, here's my theory. If you don't have enough, the day you buy your house, if you don't have enough to pay cash for that house and retire comfortably that day, then you shouldn't put any more down than the minimum down payment. I mean, think about that. People are in such a hurry to pay off their house. And then what happens when you need that equity? When you need equity, it's because typically dire straits. You got injured on the job, illness, no one ever thinks it's going to happen to them. So I try to prep people for real life happenings. Some people just think everything's going to be perfect forever. I'm going to live here for 30 years. I'm going to pay this off. And no. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm going to let you, at no cost, obviously, is hiring me until the loan closes, to take on my experience of thousands of clients and seen, some people I've done 12 loans for. Why would they have ever done you know what I mean? So I just try to utilize my experience and let them take it on, but it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to spend with clients. And I think some people aren't willing to do that.
Right.
It's easier to give them a rate, slap them on the back. Hey, see it closing. Hope my quote sticks. And I try to say, hey, I'm going to be your mortgage advisor for life. People call me about, hey, should I pay this car off or should I put more money here? Or what about my kid for college? Should I do this? And I'll always take the call and I'll always treat them. I mean, I'm not a financial advisor, but I take a financial advisory approach when it comes to mortgage lending. So,
yeah. And you're phenomenal at it. So we'll have your mortgage Mason advisors in the show notes so that people can find you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, think about it, friend. The philosophy behind having cash available to fund the opportunities in life is what Craig's talking about.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and it's been monumental for me, especially as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, using that equity, if you will, in terms of cash flow to fund my businesses, I wouldn't be here today without it.
Right. I'll even tell people too, they're like, well, I want my payment to be $1,500. So I'm going to put $100,000 down so I have a lower payment. And I'm like, just stop. You want to spend you want to put $100,000 payment. You don't have lower payments. You are dangerously prepaying in a lump sum your lower payment. So, and I got a little sidetracked a second ago, but when people need their money is usually when they can't access it.
Right.
Hey, I missed a couple payments because I got hurt on the job. Well, you got 2 late mortgage payments.
Now I don't have a job.
You don't have a job. You got 2 late mortgage payments. Your credit's dropped.
Who's going to finance it?
You got no access to your equity. So, and it doesn't matter if you have $1 million house and now somebody might lend.
Sure.
I can't say never,
maybe
but
a private money lender
right.
is going to charge you 25%.
Yeah. With
a baseball bat.
That's exactly what I was going to say, with Hugo standing out watching you, outside your window. But anyway, so I just try to say, just protect your cash, keep it on hand. I would rather have, if you're saving $500 or $800 a month by putting $100,000 down that you don't need to, how many $800 payments does $100,000 supply? And you're not going to see the end of it. You know what I mean? So
good advice.
So I try to and it takes a lot of time. People don't get that.
No, they don't. And it takes time and investment, and that you're not trying to, back in the day, you'd have people who, what I say is knock your head off with just a high fee loan.
Right.
Because they thought, I'll never see this person again. No, these are cultivating long-term relationships for the life of the experience, right? And that's how we both operate. We want to create these long-lasting relationships with people who value the input that we have based on years and years of experience to do what? To give them the best possible scenario to manage their finances in a way that leads them to the life they want.
Right.
And so I appreciate you for that.
Sure. Thank you.
Many, many other things. So we have to get you back on the show because I want to talk about, on our next episode together, I want to talk about some of the aspects of the political world from a business perspective. You and I have talked about this off camera, and some of our listeners are like, ooh,
yeah,
we haven't really dove deeply into this kind of stuff. I think it'll be good.
Okay. Yeah. I'd be very interested.
Sounds good, man. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Well, my friend, we did it. I'm so honored you were able to join me on this episode of A Call to Leadership. Now, this might not be for everyone because you really have to be in a certain place in order to take the kind of steps to level up your leadership. And I want you to be taking steps. You who feel like you're ready for something like this, you can go to our website, greatsummit.com. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. You and I will get to spend some time together and really focus on aiming for greatness.